Welcome to Deep Dive, episode 5. I'm super excited. Your boy D with Pastor Smith, my dad, and I'm super excited for this episode. If you haven't watched the message, as always, it's on our YouTube. Go circle back, go watch it, and then come back to us. It's funny because I always joke around with him. Like I told y'all last week, we could tell he didn't preach for Sunday. He preached twice. He preached a 20-minute segment, and then he preached a 53-minute segment. But it was good stuff. That's what we care about, man. The only time really matters is if you just up here rambling. But when you're actually talking about something, don't no one really care about the time. I just like messing with him. But usually, I ask for your opening remarks. But I kind of just want to jump into a question I had. And, one of the main moments for me that I really, when I've been listening back over the sermon over and over again, was really just the whole segment on the dude and his parents. And his parents wouldn't stand with him. They was like, they kept saying, there's a passage in Luke, and Jesus had healed a man, and the parents, the people was asking the parents, but he's like, he's old enough, go do it. And it really, the overall question before we really even dive deeper into that story per se is just like, can you stand on it? Because that's what I just been hearing. Like, are we truly willing to stand on it? I mean, you know the stories of the Bible where dudes was really killed. And in real life today, it's not just Bible stories. In other countries, people are being killed for their love of Jesus. And my question is, how do we really get to that point that we will stand on it?
I think you said it. You get there day by day. You're building that what we've been talking about it, how did Noah get there? So you think about, we say how he built the ark, but look at all the time it took for him to build that. Look at 120 years.
Yep.
When you think about it, day by day to build 150 days to sustain that kind of rain that went for 40 days and 40 nights. So the storms are going to come in life. Sometimes the storms are to show, you've heard me say this many times, where are you really on the faith level? Do you really love him? Do you really fear him? Do you really trust him? And most of us would say yes to all that. And then when the storm comes, because the evidence is that the parents love the boy. Because early on in that text, the what was interesting, the thing about this set of parents were, they had already been accused of, what did they do? Did the mom do something? Did the dad do something? Because back then, the kid born blind, some defect, people think that the parents did some sin. And remember the famous words, he said, neither sinned. It's for me to get the glory. So when you circle back around, as you say, to think about that, so when the time came, we realized, because what made me go backwards when it was talking about, and they will put you out of the synagogue in that verse. And so talking about putting you out of the synagogue, and the parents were more concerned of being put out of society's best, because it seemed like they were going to the temple, they're doing something, they might have had a little status or whatever, but they couldn't go. Because if you'd gotten in some trouble or whatever it was, you could be put out of the synagogue for 30 days. And they chose to, instead of to take a chance on being put out of synagogue and being ostracized by the community, they chose to, basically, as the old saying is, they threw their son under the bus. He's of age. So we know when the Bible speaks of an age of accountability, it's between 18 and 21. So somewhere in that age, he's of age, go ask him. He told us the same thing he told y'all. And I'm just like, man, the more you just deeper in that, it's like, golly, parents. And it made us all look at something. What would you do? How? Would you really stand up? Maybe me and my wife, we talked about, where are we? Would we really stand up for your kids in that situation? And again, we're all saying we would, but sometimes, like you said, you just don't know until the storm comes. You don't know how deep your roots are. Because, just right there, as soon as they said that, they came back to go ask him. And then later on, you might already got there going to say, the son stood on it.
Mm-hmm.
The son said, I already told you once. What do you want me to say again? I don't care what y'all call him. If you call him a sinner, you can call him whatever you want to call him. All I know is I was blind and now I see.
And that's the interesting piece that I was definitely going to hit on next is this. It seems like this man didn't know Jesus. You know what I'm saying? It's like, we got to remember, this is real time. You don't got Matthew, Mark, and Luke and John to go back and read. Like, this is happening in real time. So he don't know Jesus more than possibly just everyone's just talking about this man, Jesus, but he don't really know him. Right. But that don't stop him. He said, I don't know if because they said, he said, I don't know. Y'all can say what y'all want. I don't know if he's a sinner or not. That's not my concern. My concern is he healed me. And I think that's a big piece of the answer is we got to really just walk in the realness. Sometimes it's not about I can recite every Bible verse. I can do all this. I know everything about Jesus' 33 and a half years life. But what I know is he's done X, Y, and Z in my life.
Yes.
So where I might not be able to tell you what Hosea is about, I know Jesus stepped up when X, Y, and Z happened, and he got me through it. And I just think if we really locked in and kept a fresh memory, it's still not going to be perfect because you got dudes like Peter who walked with him. And then 3 times after the rooster crowed, he realized, oh, dang, I denied him like I said. But then there's the next question is, okay, you fell short. The beauty of it is people in the Bible fell short and they went on to build the great church. So you're not done. You just have to make a choice. I'm not going to make that mistake again and really try to lock in and hope. Because I was really thinking, just with you being on that Noah kick here lately, the beginning of his life is faithful and all that stuff. But sometimes we tend to forget he was so faithful. That situation was so hard. All he wanted to do is as soon as he got off the boat, plant a vineyard and get drunk.
Yes.
He didn't want to handle none of that. And then, not being no great, that's tough. Because like when you really think about the Noah's Ark, there's a few stories that we've just made 2 children's stories. Mm-hmm. And Noah's Ark is one of them. It's not just a cute little zoo ride with everyone on the boat, people scratching on it. Let me in. You hear the people screaming as they drown and they're dying. And even if that, I've heard people say the wood was soundproof, the way God's just such a good, because that would have just drove you mad, but you still know it happened.
Yes.
So even if he couldn't physically, which I'm not sure he couldn't hear it, but even if he couldn't hear it, what happened. They all drowned. So you can understand why he just wanted to get drunk and try to get out of it. It was never the same after the fact. But I don't want to leave us there. I want to know how can we go through what God takes us through, but then keep the strength to keep going and not let it just be so heavy on us that it just takes us out.
You have to say again, when you think of the whole counsel of God from Genesis to Revelation, you can't do nothing but God, the grace of God. The only way we're going to make it. And as we say, we talk in third person. You take God out of the equation, you take him away from me, I'm going to be a drunkard. I'm going to be a whore. I'm going to do all those things. It's because the pressures of this world can get to you. I wanted to go back and hit something that you just said, because when you asked me the question, they said, did he know him? After the parents threw him under the bus, they said, therefore his parents said, he's of age, ask him. Look at the next thing that this boy says to him. So they again called the man who was blind, and he said to him, give God the glory. We know that this man is a sinner. He answered and said, whether he is a sinner or not, I do not know. One thing I know, that though I was blind, and now I see. And then they said to him again, what did he do to you? How did he open your eyes? And he answered them, I told you already, and you did not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you also want to become his disciples? Right. So he didn't, but then at the end he did, because it's what he did. That's why he asked that question. Do you want to become? Because now I'm out here sharing the good news.
That also is the key word.
Yes.
You also.
Yes.
Does that mean
yes. The game changer. I might not have known him. I just heard my parents. I was blind. I just heard all these other folk I just saw. Now, so when I go back to when I very first started the message, what more do you need to see and hear?
Yeah.
So sometimes, the parents and so you would, and we think, put that into context. 30 days, and you couldn't cover your son and just stand with him? And Bo said, all I know is this one we've been studying, this Jesus we've been talking about has come in here and made my son to see, who was once blind. He was born blind. So when you think about all of that, you put it all together, it is amazing. I mean, we just talk about it all the time. And again, I'm like, man, what did this young man, like I said, 18 to 21-year-old, going through life, being blind, born blind, all that stuff, and now he can see. And yet the Sanhedrin, the Pharisees, he came to him. And that's powerful when you really stop and think about it as I look at it again. Man.
Yeah, because that's really bold. That's really bold.
Very bold.
Like, he really could have been killed for. I mean, could you get the power them dudes have? What you asking me this for? Y'all trying to be his disciples too? Like, that would have been took as a smart. Whoa, buddy! Don't forget who you are now. Don't forget who we are. So yeah, God put a different type of boldness in him in that moment. But just building off of what more do you need to see? Why do you think we constantly need? One of the things that is constantly said is like new revelation, seeking a new word, need new bread, stuff like this. Why do you think we constantly need something else? Because you're right, God's done enough. He has a whole book for us laid out. He's given us a word, and oftentimes we ain't fully fulfilled the old words yet. We just want something new. What is it about human nature that just can't be content with? God told me to do this, and if it takes me 120, we don't even live 120 years. Because think about it. He gave Noah that one word 120 years ago. Make the boat. Here's the dimensions. Do it. Nothing else. Just build it. For us, you'd get that, and all right, 6 months later, all right, I'm making the boat, but I'm not rich yet, or I'm making the boat, but like what else is there?
I think it comes down to, and we don't use it a lot. I mean, it goes, and this is a deeper dive. So it goes about that one of the words you talk about, the tulip of what they talk about in the sovereignty of God and how it all works. So do you believe in the total depravity of man? So where you ask the question, because man wants what he can't have. He's going at, so the total depravity. So he's totally dependent on God to do everything. He can't do anything outside, because as you go through and you study, like you said, what turned Noah into a drunk? He was loving God. He was fearing God. He was trusting God. He did all the things. And it looks like he did all that to turn into the town drunk. And what his daughter did to, all the stuff. I mean, you just look and see. From the 8 people, Noah, the wife, the 3 sons and their wives. And God replenished the earth from there. And then boom, you see what happens. And so it just goes back again. And some folk, that gets kind of hairy when they say, because it makes you look at yourself when you say, you're a total deprived. Man just can't do nothing on his own. Because people want to, first of all, wait a minute, I help God get there. No, you don't. You know what I'm saying? And it talks about that in another word, that imputed righteousness. If the Holy Spirit of God doesn't impute it in you, then there's nothing in you. So when you read the Bible, you say there's nothing good in man. Nothing. He's in total depravity. There's because you said all your good works are like filthy rags. All your good works are like smoke in his nostril. That's tough, man. He's like, dang on, wait a minute. What do you mean? I feel like, my last name, my education, my bank accounts, all those things you start saying, we start really thinking that we're more than what we really are. And you just realize, no, you just was a man that God used, Noah. Mm-hmm. And then somewhere, what I'm going to say is, God took his presence off of him. Look what happened to him. God kept his hand, his presence on him. Look what happened to him. He stayed focused. He didn't get caught up in a drama. He didn't do all this. Well, it's man, because think about that assignment. For 120 years doing the same assignment.
Yep.
To protect his. Now, at the time, we sat there and we say, one thing I love today, we talked about in our prayer circle, is how when you sometimes think about that whole story, God didn't allow him to see, what to hear, all the things he was asking, maybe hearing all that, but he shut the door. He opened it and shut it. Even to the end, he opened it. Man couldn't see it. So what we say is only God can open and shut the doors of your heart. You can't do it. You can't do it on your own. Because I am convinced that Noah would have got a cousin, an uncle, a friend. Come on. I want more of y'all. But God said that ain't up to you. And so we see that picture of salvation, because the new creation was key. And salvation's of the Lord. So even when you try from Old Testament, New Testament, it's of the Lord. Now, the only thing that we get is the joy of it. That's what it happens. So you sit there and say, like I said, every time you've heard me say, all of the struggles that I have caused in my, and that's a great way, that I have caused in my life is because I quit loving him, I quit fearing him, and I quit trusting him. So I started loving the world. I started fearing the world. I started trusting the world. And you can't have it both ways. So you will love one and hate the other. Yeah. It's all through there. So it all comes full circle. And sometimes, man, you ain't got to get deep. It's really that simple. But we try to make things so deep, so complicated that it blows up on us. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I view, that when you ask that question, how did that happen? You hear me say you got to stay so connected, so plugged in. You got to hear him daily. Even in the New Testament, it said we must die daily. We must die daily. They were, even as we later on, and you going through that text through that scripture, and that's coming out of John chapter 9. And even when they were asking him, because look what they say. So after he said that to him and hit him, like you said, because it does make some time. Somebody just give him the word. And he said, and the men got upset when he said, do you also want to become a disciple? Because that hit you. So if we're going to deep dive, then look what the next thing they came back at him. Then they reviled him and said, you are his disciple, but we are Moses' disciples. See, they understood and knew. Come on, and look, it's crazy. So now we understand the story of Moses still to this day, because Moses was the vessel that God used to bring them out of bondage and take them through the wilderness. So now no one knows where Moses is buried. So that's wild, because the folks still, and that's wild. Sometimes you say, ooh, what a play on word. Yeah, you're his disciple, but we're Moses. Not understanding Moses came from that lineage. You see what I'm saying? And then they go and say, we know that God spoke to Moses. As for his fellow, we do not know where he is from. The man answered and said to them, why, this is a marvelous thing that you do not know where he is from. Yet he has opened my eyes.
Man.
I didn't know him either. And I probably thought like you at one time. I was blind, but my eyes open now. And I marvel that you guys been studying in the temple. You guys are the Sanhedrin boy. You guys are the Pharisees of the Pharisees. Y'all setting the laws and don't even know him. You talking about the Mosaic laws, but don't even know the one that gave the Mosaic laws to him. Because if you've seen God, you've seen me, you've seen God, we are one. Because you can't have one without the other. Come on. So it's just a beauty. And don't try to get so deep that you get all confused, because it is a beautiful, and it really is a simple picture. They try to throw Moses at it. He said, and yeah, Moses comes from this lineage of who I'm talking about.
Man. Yeah. Speaking with all this, and you bring up Moses, it's always interesting when you do read that, because that's always the name they bring up, and Moses is one of the biggest figures. The Transfiguration, it was him, Elijah, it was Jesus, Elijah, and Moses, right? So those are like the big three. And Moses didn't even make the promised land. Started feeling himself, he got out of third person, hitting the rock. And I always feel like that's always why it's always so hard to really find that fine line because God, because we talk about a fresh word. Moses is one of the few ones that consistently God showed up for. It wasn't just a word here and do this. He consistently showed us. I mean, he's the only person that's actually seen his face, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he's the only one that got to actually see his face. And even with that intimate of a relationship, got out of line. And there's so many other just riffs you can take with that, not wanting to just do stuff all because even like hitting the rock isn't necessarily a bad thing. Just saying what God told you. And it's just like, man, you read all that and it's just funny to put them against each other because you can obviously tell Moses isn't perfect.
Right.
Moses isn't the one.
Right.
He's a I don't even want to say a good man because of what the Bible says about all men.
Right.
But he's one of the top 3 up there.
Right.
And to hold him over Jesus, who they haven't seen nothing wrong.
Right.
He's just changing the power. It's just shifting. And I think it just goes back to even where we started. We just always want more.
Right.
Until we see more. And now you start seeing that, ooh, if he actually is the standard, things change.
Well, that's why when I went back to hit that, it just comes up sometimes. I mean, you hear those terms when you're sitting around with other pastors, preachers in classes, and they talk about total depravity. And it's just one of those things called some folk don't want to believe in it because it takes it totally off the person and puts it all on God. I was like, yeah, you're right. I know I'm nothing. But some folk, it's hard for them to get to that point. I know I'm nothing without Christ. I know I'm something with Christ. So then you have to be careful. You heard me say a couple of weeks ago, you have to fight that pride because God's blown on you, God's gifted you, God's given you everything that you can imagine. How not to start thinking that you are a God? Even if it's still a little G-O-D. You know Moses knew who was the big God because he would go and talk, God would say, Moses, go and tell him. Go tell Pharaoh. So you knew he had a direct contact with him and could talk to him and all that. And even Pharaoh knew. Mm-hmm. And he would stop it for a time. But again, it just goes back to show that what happens all the way from there to the Mosaic laws, all the way to David, to Noah, to what we're talking about, then all the way up to David. Then we get all the way over into here. And the 1 John, and then John was like, man, I'm not even worthy. And look, and John was Jesus' best friend. And he said, man, I'm not even worthy to tie his shoes. You start to go through, because don't put me in that spot. Don't even, And the one, like I said, but the thing when I shared with y'all a few months ago that hit, that even when we go through this, because it's sometimes amazing that Jesus' immediate family wasn't say, at the time, it was crazy. And that's hard to believe that they was in the same house, was going through this. And he said, my beloved friend John, take care of my mama. And I've shared that when I was going through, I said, man, that's just amazing. And I know that, man, I had more comments in the church because this makes people really think. So it shouldn't shock you because what is he says multiple times, who is my family? Yeah. They that do the will of the Father. But yet that's my dad. I mean, that's my mom. That's my auntie. That's my, cousin. That's my uncle. That's my dad. And so we constantly get ourselves in these situations because we keep going against what God and I already put in place anyway.
Yeah. So when I hear the total depravity and all that, what gets tough with it is just you really just start feeling bad. In a sense, because all the folks that just ain't living with Christ, has he just not blown on them yet? And if that's the case, why hasn't he? What's the line of not blowing on them and then just letting the wind go off their back and moving? You know what I'm saying? What's kind of...
I think so I want to make sure you say that the total depravity is a representation of man can't act on anything until God activates it. Mm. So when you sit there and say in the spirit, Saul thought he was doing the right thing, thought he was doing God a favor. But then when the Lord blew on him, knocked him off course, we know turned around, then look what he was doing. And he had to go back and rewrite and change. Then wrote majority of the New Testament. So look what Paul did. He had to change. You see what I'm saying? Limited atonement. So you start going through. And they all here. So it's total depravity, unconditional election, limited atonement, irresistible grace. And you start just thinking about all those things. Because can it be? And so sometimes they ask, if God sends his spirit, can you reject it? And that's what throws people off. He said, you want to say, no, all that my Father give me, I lose no, not one. So when you understand the whole counsel, the whole problem, son, and you make a great point, is that people want to really believe they got something to do with it. That's always been the big fight. There's always been that thin hair of that balance in between there. Well, what do I play? How much I play in this role? What do I got to do with it? And you ain't got nothing to do with it. It's all God. Salvation's of the Lord. The only thing you have to do with salvation is the joy. So now that joy comes from, and we started this with Noah, because we said 120 years to do something. So you better be connected and tied in and plugged in with God to do something that long. I've been sharing with y'all, because you asked me a couple of weeks ago and it made me think. I've been doing some type of ministry work for 41 years. So then it kind of just made me really think about it. It's kind of crazy to think that. It's like, man, the lover of God, fearing God and trusting God. Sometimes if I could just take that with me, no matter the storm, no matter what comes my way, no matter what hits me, if I just realize that I can handle whatever the storm, whatever's coming, as long as I'm loving God, fearing him, and trusting him. It really is that simple. Because it takes it off me and puts it to where it's supposed to be. That's why he was birthed. The only birth that is different. That's why we struggle. Folks to this day, they still trying to figure it out. You can't figure something out that God did. He said, come on. This is why I call them miraculous birth. Every other birth we know from animals to is that, come on, it's a male and a female. And this one, look what happens. Oh. And so people to this day still trying to figure it out. And he was birthed for a purpose. The thing I love when you brought to the church a few years ago, the hidden years of Jesus. So for 30 years, he was basically hidden to show up and show out for 3.5 years. That's just powerful. 30 years. 30 years. And even his parents couldn't understand, because sometime in that part, they said when he was a kid and the parents thought they lost him because they got whatever they were doing got ahead. And then he has to chastise them and said, of all people, look at him chastising parents again. Of all people, mom and dad, you should have known I'm about my Father's business. Why was you fretting and running around looking for me? All you had to do, and they end up finding him in the temple where they left him. So the 120 years of work, the 41 years, the 8 to 10, whatever time frame God has given you, are you finding love in it? Are you finding the fear of him in it? Are you finding to trust him to do the meaningful work of God? Because it is meaningful work, and it's messy work, and it's not easy work to love God and to love God's people. Sounds good, but boy, when you really get into it and start really breaking it down, man, that's difficult to do. Yeah. Man, that's difficult to stand on. To truly love God and his people.
Yeah. Man. Well, I got one kind of, it's not as deep as these other questions. It's more just a little fun, just to kind of see what your thought process is on situations like this. Since we have been talking about Noah so much, do you think, just like the type of relationship I have with my nephew, we like best friends, like we just cool. And whatever I'm doing, he'll just say, "What you doing?" And always curious, stuff like that. Do you think that if Noah had like a nephew or something at the beginning of the time, 10 years old, 12 years old, he's walking through, he's like, "Uncle Noah, what you doing?" And he tells him, and he would have said, "Well, let me help." And he just starts tinkering and he goes off. You think God would have said, "Yeah, let him on the boat"? Or do you think it's more of a set in stone type of thing?
I think it's set in stone. That's the point of how that's the rub. Because well, the God I serve, there's no way He's not going. But again, He sent it out. He already knew. Because guess what He said? And this is why I get people. That's why you got to know it all in the simpler piece of it. I knew you from your mother's womb. Now, when's it going to activate? So guess what? I didn't have the joy that I had at 32 to now. But I was still, He knew me from my mother's womb. So from 0 to 32, if something would have happened to me, saved, sanctified on my way, because salvation's of the Lord. All that my Father give me, I lose no, not one. The problem is it hurts us. That's why we put everybody in heaven. And guess what? The real question is, we don't have a heaven nor a hell to put people in. Just because they didn't get on the boat doesn't mean that they died, but did they? So that's the debate. Everybody who didn't get on the boat, they went to hell. Or that, when people sit there, he sat there, you see how it goes. The longevity. What he said was 8 new beginnings, new creation. So Noah came and was a representation of that. Him, his wife, and his 3 sons and their wife was to replenish the earth. Because God destroyed it because of man's disobedience and how wicked and evil the world had come. We see it today. Mm-hmm. Wicked and evil has never changed. They was wicked and evil then, they wicked and evil now.
Yep.
And so we have to see, and that's where it talks about in Psalms, that still small voice, understanding what it really means to love God, to hear Him, to know what it's really about. You know what I'm saying? Absolutely. And I think I think sometimes when we really zero in, because at that age, the age of accountability, talking about your nephew, 9 years old. So we just sit there and you think about all that, and we're just going through. And as he once said, let each man examine himself. So even when we talk about the Lord's Supper and all this stuff, everything it's all personal. You can't get there on mine. I can't get there on yours. We can't get there on your parents, the pastor, the church. You got to get there on your own. So everybody says every knee shall bow and every tongue shall confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. So that day. So now what I'm going to tell folk is there is, because to me, the famous words of that, when I say the joy of the salvation, is when David came to himself in Psalm 51. And I tell folk all the time, and you read that verses 1 through 10 in Psalm 51, I'm always amazed that David never asked about getting his salvation back. David said, Lord, restore the joy of my salvation. And I've stayed in that all my life and walked in it. Man, you can have some trip ups. You're going to have some slip ups. You're going to fall. You're going to do some things. You're going to look how you come crushing. But if you belong to the Lord, and I tell folk all the time, so I say it this way. You are the royal priesthood, so why are you living like a peasant? Chances are you can't walk in Psalms 37 and 25. For I've not seen the righteous forsaken, nor my seed begging bread. Because if you know, and you know that you're the royalty, you know that you belong to Him. So how come you can't? Because of all that other stuff that's going on, the evil, you out here living and wilding and doing your stuff, and there's no joy in it. There's no real joy. And I tell folk all the time, man, because heaven, as they say, heaven is where Christ is. So Christ is in my heart. So I'm having a piece of heaven right here. Then I'm going to have the perfected heaven, the new heaven over there later on where there's no, come on now. But here it is, come on. But I'm having a peace. That's where it says I can have peace. Where there's no peace. Where's the light? Where there's nothing but darkness. Where's the joy? Where there's joy, where people have, there's no joy. It's like, man, that's hard. What do you mean? Man, I got it. I got peace through all the storms. And that's why when Jesus shared with the disciples, they was all on the boat with him. You didn't trust me? You thought the storm was you feared the storm more than you trusted that I loved you. You know, you hear me say this all the time. I mean, God showed us his great love by sending his only begotten son who knew no sin. And yet the Bible says every common sin known to man was thrown at him. And yet he knew no sin.
Man. Yeah. Guys, that's another deep dive. I've enjoyed it. I know you will too. Really, after watching listening to the sermon and then talking through this, I really just pray that we all just get that boldness to really stand on it. Even if our mom and dads won't stand with us, our brothers and sisters, our best friends, aunts, uncles, whoever won't stand with you, I pray that we can trust our experiences with God and say, look, I don't know about none of that y'all talking about. Y'all trying to get so deep and twist and turn, and I don't care about none of that. Jesus did this. And just stand on it. And if we get there, we'll see God move and all the miracles and the powers that he said we would see. Right. You have any last thoughts?
I just think, again, what we learned this morning in the prayer session, I thought was so powerful. That we want to be like Noah was. Noah was so focused in loving him, fearing him, and trusting him that he was able to complete that sign for 120 years. And we know, like you said earlier, these things are going to happen. Didn't say that life wasn't going to hit you. Life wasn't going to life you, as we say to kids today. I mean, there's a lot of things going to happen. We know, but man, I just want to be so locked in that even when you say one of your famous ones a year or two ago can't come down.
Yep.
I'm so locked in that I just can't come down. I'm doing a great work. You can come up here, but I can't come down to you. I'm doing a great work. My hands are raised up. I'm doing a great work for the Lord, and I can't come down to that foolishness and that weakness and evilness of the world. But you can come up here with me and hold your hands up, and let's rock and roll.
Y'all heard it. Deep dive number 5. We'll see y'all soon.